is less well known is that Maine has an oil pipeline to Canada, and we could be the next focus in efforts to bring tar sands crude oil to the United States. This is cause for concern, and we want Maine people to learn more about this possibility and the potential risks to our state. Tar sands is not like conventional oil. Its extraction makes it one of the most destructive of any energy sources today. It brings enormous ecological and public health impacts to central Canada, and tar sands oil is 2 to 4 times worse for climate change than conventional oil. And these facts alone might give Maine people pause about hosting a flow of tar sands oil through the state. But the potential impacts are even closer to home because of the potential use of Maine's oil pipeline, which flows right alongside Sebago Lake. Over here, one of Maine's most treasured great ponds and source of drinking water to the entire Portland region. Another reason tar sands is not like conventional oil is because it's more acidic and more corrosive. It's piped at higher temperatures and higher pressures, and these facts and others could increase the risk of an oil spill. Maine's oil pipeline currently brings oil from here in Portland, and tankers are, of course, unloading right over there, to Montreal. And this connects us to the large network of North American oil pipelines. In fact, we're standing at the only harbor on the East Coast that connects to the crude oil pipeline network. And from Montreal, oil flows west across Ontario for now. And you can see on this map some of the pipeline in this region, and in particular the line that flows across Ontario to Montreal and down to Portland. The Canadian pipeline company Enbridge is actively seeking permission from the Canadian Energy Board to reverse the flow of crude oil along a portion of that line between Ontario and Portland. And they've asked to reverse the flow. To be clear, it travels from here in Portland up to Montreal and then west over to Ontario. And they want to start to bring it east from Ontario part of the way to Montreal. Over the past few years, Enbridge has described its interest in reversing the flow along the entire line, all the way to Montreal and all the way to Portland, which would make sense for them given the enormous profits at stake in getting landlocked tar sands oil from Alberta to U.S. and global markets. In the face of increased opposition and scrutiny, and their proposal to fast-track this initial reversal was rejected last year, Enbridge is trying to downplay this possibility, including by breaking the project up into incremental pieces. The Portland Pipeline Company, which owns the line between here and Montreal, said last week it has no active proposal, but as recently as August that said, we're interested in reversing the flow of one of our pipelines, allowing us to move Western Canadian crude oil to the East Coast. Enbridge has said it would file an application to reverse the flow the rest of the way to Montreal as soon as market conditions warrant. This means it's time to get the facts about tar sands oil and tar sands pipelines, and for Maine to begin a discussion about what this might mean for our state, our environment, our waters, and our climate. That's the discussion the people of Nebraska have been having regarding the Keystone Pipeline. They've expressed grave concerns about the risk to their water supplies and other impacts from Keystone, concerns that they might have thought were going away with the rejection of that permit. Unfortunately, that doesn't look to be the case. Take over.
Good morning. My name is Danielle Droich. I'm with the Natural Resources Defense Council. We have 1.3 million members and activists nationwide and over 10,000 members and activists here in Maine. I want to talk to you a bit about the proposed legislation right now in Washington, introduced in both the House and the Senate. Would have Congress approve the Keystone XL tar sands pipeline before finishing the environmental review and before a final pipeline route is confirmed. Fast-tracking the Keystone XL tar sands pipeline with congressional legislation and preventing the environmental review process from moving forward is playing politics with the American people. It puts our nation's landowners, waters, and water at risk. Congress is not a permitting agency. It cannot conduct a comprehensive environmental review process to analyze the public health and safety issues, and it does not facilitate public input. In fact, this legislation is designed to avoid all of that. Bypassing the environmental review for the Keystone XL tar sands pipeline is reckless because it will carry tar sands. The Keystone XL pipeline is a tar sands pipeline. Tar sands is very different from conventional oil. It is more corrosive. It can lead to much greater risk of pipeline accidents. It is precisely why the farmers and the landowners in Nebraska are so concerned. And it is why folks in Maine should also be watching very carefully. The proposed legislation forces approval of an export pipeline. Keystone XL is a tar sands export pipeline to go through America, not to America. This is something the American people must understand. It will not bring the United States energy security. Maine's congressional delegation should not support any efforts to fast-track the legislation, and my colleague Glenn will talk more about that. But I wanted to briefly finish up by just talking a little bit about the tar sands. Tar sands is a very different substance than conventional oil. It is more corrosive. It is more acidic. It creates more pipeline risks. This is why so many millions of Americans are concerned. It is why Americans have been opposed to the Keystone XL tar sands pipeline, but it is also why tar sands in general is a real concern. And it is why when President Obama rejected the Keystone XL pipeline in January, that he put America's public health and safety at the forefront. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Glenn Brand. I'm the director of Sierra Club Maine, based here in Portland. President Obama rejected the Keystone pipeline last month because the project to pump dirty tar sands oil from Canada through the environmental health and safety risk for the states that the pipeline would pass through, and because it takes our country's energy future in the wrong direction on greater dependence on dirty and dangerous fossil fuels. Unfortunately, big oil corporations and their allies in Congress are now attempting to circumvent the president's decision. Thankfully, to date, Maine Senators Olympia Snowe and Susan Collins have not co-sponsored South Dakota Senator Hovind's bill to overrule the president's rejection of Keystone. We urge Senator Snowe and Collins to continue to withhold their support from the Senate's tar sands pipeline bill and also to speak out and vote against it, whether as a standalone bill or as an amendment to other bills. Congress should not get into the business of permitting individual pet projects of big oil, especially in this case, as the controversial Keystone pipeline has not gone through a full environmental health and safety review process, and as Kate told you, before even a route for the pipeline is even finalized. Mainers are counting, once again, on their senators to stand strong against big oil lobbyists and special interests, and we look to Senators Snowe and Collins to help lead our country into a cleaner energy future. They can do this now by opposing the Keystone pipeline as well as speaking out against bringing dirty tar sands oil through Maine to Portland Harbor. Thank you. Questions?
In fact, their application, this is Enbridge in Canada, their application for this partial project is called Phase 1. It's called Phase 1 in their application. And they haven't really talked about Phase 2, but again, they've openly talked about this.
Well, you openly talked about that. Can you clarify, Dylan, what they've openly talked about to us?
About reversing the flow of oil all the way from Sarnia, Ontario, all the way to Portland. So that entire reversal is openly being discussed as a possibility. And it's true that there aren't active permits in applications in front of us, but now is the time for Maine people to learn about tar sands oil and to understand the risks. And I think that's what we're here to talk about today.
In terms of Keystone XL, I mean, part of the reason is just that that's the name of the pipeline. There's an existing pipeline called Keystone, and that pipeline actually is spilled already 14 times in its first year of operation. And so we have to distinguish Keystone, which is a sister pipeline to Keystone XL, which is the pipeline that's not yet has been built yet. But I think it's a fair point that we have you know, helping the American people understand the importance of this. This is not conventional oil. This is very, very different. And because of that, we have to find a way to communicate that we're not dealing with a typical conventional pipeline, and we have to find ways to communicate that to the public so that they understand why we're so concerned about this particular pipeline versus all the many other pipelines that do crisscross the American landscape.
And as a follow-up, the other challenge is, and you guys are speaking it today to try to get the word out. I just spoke with a representative of an in-state environmental agency and said, hey, do you know this was going on? And they said, oh, Keystone, it's over. You know, and it's just, I think that's what happens is things get compartmentalized and now that problem's gone. And keeping this
I
forward.
just want to re-emphasize that not only is Keystone not over, but we are expecting a bill to be before Congress voted next week. Whether that becomes Senator Hovind's bill, a standalone bill, or attached to something unrelated like the transportation bill, this is very much alive, both in the House and the Senate. And so that's why it's so important for Senators Snowe and Collins to continue to hold out. There are only 3 Republican senators who have not co-sponsored Senator Hovind's Keystone Pipeline bill. And of course 2 of those are our senators. It's very important that they not only that people know that they haven't co-sponsored it, we celebrate that, but that we insist that they speak out openly against it and vote against it when it does come up in Congress.
Tar sands is 10 to 15 times more acidic than conventional oil. It's 5 to 10 times, contains 5 to 10 times more sulfur. It has far more salts and sediments, which are corrosion factors. It also contains, when it's piped into the United States, it's actually mixed with volatile petroleum products to make it more less viscous, to actually move it in. And that actually also contains a number of carcinogens and different types of compounds that are toxic to the environment and to human health. So it's a fundamentally, and this is actually widely accepted, the tar sands and diluted bitumen, the product that's actually brought in, is very different than conventional oil. Right now, it is absolutely confirmed that the U.S. and Canadian environmental standards for pipelines is no different than for tar sands for conventional oil. We don't have different standards for those pipelines. We actually know that the pipelines carrying tar sands actually have had a higher incidence of spills. Now, we haven't had a comprehensive safety study looking at tar sands pipelines, but we need that. And that's one of the things that NRDC is calling for. So we have really strong evidence that there's a problem with the fact that we have these tar sands pipelines, more and more of them coming to the States. We don't have specialized regulations for those pipelines, and we have more spills coming from those pipelines. So there's something wrong. We don't know exactly what, which is why we need to study that more and understand the implications. Well, we actually do. We know that that's from corrosion. We know that those spills are due to corrosion. Not every time. In some cases, it's a pumping station. In the Keystone 1 pipeline, those pipeline spills can't be from corrosion because it's a year. That pipeline's only been around for about a year. So those pipelines issues that's around a safety issue with TransCanada and with the way that pipeline company operates. And there is no such thing as a pipeline that doesn't spill. You will always have spills from pipelines. But if you have 14 spills from TransCanada, its first year of operation from Keystone, there's something wrong there. That may not be from tar sands, that may be the safety record of that company. But 14 spills in a first year is not a good record. But I wanted to also mention the Kalamazoo spill. So basically, that was a tar sands spill. It's one of the largest spills of tar sands in the United States that happened in 2010. That tar sands spill was expected to be cleaned up in 2 months. It is now 18 months later and they haven't cleaned it up. And the reason is because tar sands is a very different substance. It's basically heavier than water. It sinks to the bottom. It's submerged oil. It originally was going to be about $200 million to clean it up. Now it's a $750 million cleanup. And it will take years to clean up this. So tar sands, I mean, in addition to the fact that it's more acidic and more corrosive, it actually has these properties that make it incredibly difficult to clean up. And people have had to be moved out of their homes, and there's been actually some health issues. So again, going back, tar sands is not the same as conventional oil. That is a very widely known fact. It's just that we don't have the proper regulations in place, and looking at those as different in our pipeline safety system.
How many barrels was the spill in Kalamazoo, do you know?
It was 1 million gallons.
1 million gallons?